Drone companies say, despite the Civil Aviation Authority's efforts to improve the timeliness of drone certifications, a massive increase in the number of applications means wait times are still too long. Currently, it takes anywhere from 8 to 12 months to have an application approved, with companies reporting the equivalent process in Australia takes only about 6 weeks. The CAA says it prioritises amendments or renewals for operators already in the system over new applications. It also admits its resourcing's been focused elsewhere. The upcoming audit from the International Civil Aviation Organisation and implementation of the new Civil Aviation Act, as well as in-house organisation changes. Within the aviation sector, there are concerns, including the rising costs of compliance, skills shortages, and a concern that the regulator's been overly punitive in the past. We'll soon hear from the new head of the CAA. First, however, our guest is Craig Simpson on the drones issue, Managing Director of Aerolab and President of the Agricultural Drone Association. Kia ora, Craig. Welcome to 9 to Noon.
Kia ora, Kathryn. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we're not talking about drones to take pretty pictures or bother your neighbours. Far from it. This is now an intrinsic piece of technology in many industries. Can you explain what the demand is in yours?
Demand has picked up considerably in the last couple of years. The problem is that we're far behind the rest of the world. Australia has 10 times the amount of spray drones in operation than us, and they only have 5 times the population. So, which is also quite bizarre because Australia has very flat land that you can use with vehicles and planes and so on, whereas New Zealand, we farm very steep land, which is incredibly dangerous. If you think about it, there's 22 quad bike deaths in recent years and 400 injuries from vehicles on steep ground. So drones are the solution to the problem, and yet we're way behind the rest of the world.
So what is happening? There's a lot of agricultural operators, but also big infrastructure users like lines companies, I think transports, those doing road transport and road maintenance also make use of them, Craig. It's quite general.
Yes, and building wash is another one that's coming through quickly. And what it really means is that drones have the opportunity to reduce injuries and reduce death. So
it's a productivity change too, isn't it? Let's be upfront about that. We're just talking about the economy and how much time can it save in being able to utilise this technology.
Well, the amazing thing is, like, if you needed to spray gorse on a hillside in New Zealand, the drone is by far the most effective method that you could ever use. If you wanted to inspect a building or inspect infrastructure, drone is by far the most cost-effective way to do that as well. So the fact that we can't get enough people flying drones in New Zealand is a real barrier to growth.
This is the commercial sector primarily, as we said. We're all aware of how drones are used more recreationally. So if you're in business, what do you have to do in order to use them in business? Is there a height limit that kicks in, or how wide is the net that needs to get permission?
If you're flying over infrastructure or over property without permission, which is quite common, or you're flying a large drone, you need to be certified by CAA to operate that drone, and they issue a certificate. And what our problem is that those certificates take up to 12 months to be approved, which means that, and they were 18 months, that it has increased significantly. The time has come down lately, but that delay means that people are just not getting into it. They're not utilising this technology like they should.
Where does the impact happen? Is it the farmer themselves, or is it the intermediary who offers the service? Is that the area that's just not rolling out as it should? Are some businesses not starting up that should be starting up?
Yeah, it's the contractors. It's the opportunity for people to become a contractor and buy a drone and operate that drone, either being a spray contractor or fertiliser or so on, or survey work. They're just not getting those opportunities because we're so slow at getting them through. And it's not a budget problem because CAA charges $250 an hour, so that's a couple of $1,000s a day. an assessor probably has 200 working days, so the assessor's making 400 grand a year for CAA to approve these. So it's obviously not a budget problem. I think it was a people problem. I think they probably misread demand and couldn't really get enough talented people into CAA to process these in enough time. I'm told by CAA that they're improving that, and they've hired some people even just recently.
How comprehensive is the information you have to provide? Like, how complex is it to process one of these when it gets to the desk?
It used to be difficult because everybody's application was different, but the industry's got very, very good at making sure that the applications all fit within a similar pilot pathway and training pathway and the way they operate. So everybody's standardised their documentation that they submit to CAA now. So essentially you submit a safety document, that safety document's approved and they issue you a certificate. We have been working very, very hard behind the scenes to make those safety documents, the operating manuals, all very, very similar so CAA doesn't get surprised with something that's very, very different.
They say they're prioritising renewals and amendments to CAA, but are there still delays even with those?
Yes. And I spoke to the head of the drone team this morning, in fact, and they've just hired a bunch of people, so they're catching up. My concern is that demand from me selling drones has already doubled. So even if they hire more people, the demand will double in the same time frame. And like I said, we are way behind the rest of the world because of this, and I'm not seeing enough for us to catch up.
How far behind the rest of the world are we? Comparable nations, say.
Well, take Australia. They've processed nearly 3,000 of these applications. We've processed maybe about 250. So, that's a 10x, and we're only 5x the population. And if we take Asia and those other places where they approve it a lot quicker, they are 30, 40x the amount of drones in operation. Like, it's a disaster because New Zealand is best suited for drones because we have so much steep country. Like, a drone is perfectly suited for New Zealand farming, and yet we are just not adopting it.
How have other jurisdictions sped it up?
What they do is they standardise the process. So they say, as long as your document meets all these requirements, we will approve it quickly. So it's a lot more like a licence than a certificate.
Have they also outsourced in Australia? Have they outsourced to a third party?
Yes, they have. Yes, and most places around the world they outsource it. Very similar to how driver's licensing is outsourced in New Zealand and other licensing is outsourced in New Zealand.
All right, Craig, thanks very much. That is Craig Simpson, who is with Aerolab, Managing Director of Aerolab, President of the Agricultural Drone Association. One of the issues we'll be raising with CAA shortly. Kane Patena is the new Director of the Civil Aviation Authority, and it's great to have you. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning, Kathryn. Good to see you. Let's
work through some of the things we've heard. First, on the drones, I've got someone saying, when are the chainsaw drones coming? I've seen photos of those too. I'm losing my view to wilding pines every day. We know this technology is becoming more and more a part of so many sectors. What can you say about the length of time it's taking to process applications, including renewals?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say. I think it's fair to say that the processing times are still longer than what they should be. We have made some good progress over the last 12 months. I think, as Craig mentioned, it was 18 months at one point. The latest that I'd heard from the team is it's taken us 4 to 6 months now. So there's been a significant improvement, but I'll be the first to accept that we're still not where we need to be. That's why when I spoke to the conference last week, I said that one of the strategic priorities for us as an organisation is to get the timeliness of our certifications and licences under control, whether they be new applications or renewals.
And what is your ultimate target for how long it should take? 6 weeks we're hearing in Australia.
Well, I think it's important to benchmark how we perform against other jurisdictions. You need to also understand whether or not it's a like-for-like certification, so there's still a bit that we're working through. The approach that I want us to take is in 2 phases. One is we know that there's a timeliness issue today. The team's making good progress. We're bringing some people on board, and we just need to keep going hard at that. But the second bit is to actually look at the end-to-end processes for certifications and licences, because they're across a number of different aspects of the aviation sector. And the things that I've got in mind are there opportunities to use AI? Are there opportunities to automate? And are there opportunities to standardise the process? So the things that Craig talked to you about a moment ago is exactly where my head's at in terms of thinking how we need to drive some change.
So getting away from paper be a good start, and are you saying you could move to quasi-automatic renewal, in fact, if all your data's the same?
Yeah, correct. Well, Craig had talked about the New Zealand Transport Agency and driver licensing, and
You've got some experience there.
I've got some experience there. I was the Director of Land Transport before I joined Civil Aviation, and one of the areas that we focused on was how do we improve some of the licensing regimes, not just for driver licensing, but passenger endorsements, taxi, Uber drivers and the like. So there are ways that we can speed up and improve the process. How much of this is going to be
about cost, Kane? Is it going to be about having to invest in new technology, and that's going to be a cost for the CAA?
There will be some cost to implement some of these changes, but if it results in a better efficiency in how we operate, if it reduces the time that businesses have to spend on it, less time trying to navigate through our bureaucracy and more time spent on how they grow their business, that's a good outcome. And I think we can do that in a way without compromising the safety and security standards, because what I've heard in talking to the sector, no one wants to compromise that. I mean, if you think about if you're paying to fly an airline and you've got two choices with the same spend, you want to fly an airline that's got a reputation for safety and one that doesn't, where are you going to spend your money? And the point that I made at the conference last week is the ability for the sector to thrive and to contribute to economic growth and productivity is built off a foundation of safety and security, so we can't lose sight of that.
Should drone pilots be licensed? I think Simon's just floated this. Are they not currently?
There's still some work that we need to do to improve the rules and standards around drones and licensing. I know that there's some work that's underway at the moment. We're consulting on some of the rule changes. We're in the process of reviewing that. There'll be a summary of the feedback that we've got through the consultation in November with a view of putting some rules and standards in place.
In principle, should they be licensed?
Well, that's one of the things that we're looking at.
Kane, can we come back to the issue of costs? Are you under-resourced? And we're hearing the sector saying you've just put our fees up. In the case of passenger fees for Sounds Air, 145%. Why did that need to happen? That's slightly above the annual inflation rate. Why did that need to happen?
Yeah, so the civil aviation needs to stand on its own 2 feet rather than necessarily relying on the government or Crown contributions. And so there was a pricing review.
What happens in other countries? What's the percentage? What's the split in Australia, for example?
Well, I'm sort of still yet to do that comparative analysis. What we are doing at the moment, though, is that we are undertaking a first principles funding and fee review. That work will progress over the next 12 months and ultimately will rely on the Associate Minister for Transport and Cabinet to make some decisions about what that looks like. But what we're focused on is how do we make sure that we are driving and operating in the most efficient way possible, because whatever the costs are for us to be able to deliver our regulatory role and function, what you're debating about after that is what's the fairest way to provide that impost through user fees or through a Crown contribution.
Well, I'm coming back to Simon's point about economic growth. That's actually the prerogative of a government if it wants to support economic growth. And the way it might do that in this instance is fund its regulator to get its systems up to date and have enough people to do the job. All right. On the issue, please, the other issues about relationships with the general aviation sector, which has been a significant factor for many, many years, Kane. How would you talk about the culture that you want within your organisation and dealing with others?
Yeah, well, you come back to what our core role is, which is to facilitate the safe and secure operation of the aviation system. That means we're an influencer. That means we're an enabler. And so it strikes me that if we're going to be able to drive the shift that we want in terms of maintaining and improving safety standards and realise some of the other opportunities such as economic growth and productivity, we can't do it alone. We need to work with the sector. And that message I made pretty clear last week at the conference. It'll be the message I continue to sell both externally and within our organisation as well.
All right. What are the other prime issues that you have, your priorities for the job?
Well, as I'd say, the key priorities for me that are emerging at the moment is cost-based, making sure we're efficient, getting the rules and standards up to date and fit for purpose, which is one of the actions in the Aviation Action Plan, making improvements to our licensing and certification area, and making sure that we keep on top of passenger queue times and making sure that we don't have any long wait lists or queues there. That's going to be underpinned by 3 main areas of focus. One is looking at digital and technology improvements. The second is engagement with the sector. It's so important. And the third is lifting our leadership capability to drive the culture that we need.
All right. Thank you for being with us this morning. That is Kane Patena. Thanks also to Craig Simpson.